You walk away from a simple conversation, and it follows you home. In the shower, in bed, in the quiet seconds before sleep, one sentence keeps replaying, then another. Why did I say it like that? Why didn't I say more? I felt that strange ache of being trapped in a moment that's already over, yet somehow still alive in my head. It's exhausting and oddly intimate. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman once wrote in Thinking Fast and Slow, "Nothing in life is as important as you think it is while you are thinking about it." When a conversation loops in your mind, it can feel enormous, like it defines you. The replay isn't just about words. It's about the fear of being misunderstood, the hope of being seen, and the quiet pressure to get human connection right. But what is your mind really trying to do in these endless reruns? Protect you, punish you, or teach you something you haven't yet learned? After a conversation ends, your brain doesn't simply file it away like a finished document. It lingers, circling back as if something important is still unresolved. This is especially true after emotionally charged moments. A joke that didn't land, a pause that felt awkward, a compliment you weren't sure how to accept. In everyday life, these small social details matter more than we admit. They touch a deep part of us that is wired to monitor belonging and safety. From a psychological perspective, replaying conversations is tied to how humans process social information. We are meaning-making creatures. Your mind is trying to interpret tone, facial expressions, and hidden intentions, almost like reviewing footage to understand what really happened. When you think about a meeting with your boss or a late-night talk with a friend, you're not just revisiting words. You're scanning for signals. Did they approve of me? Did I hurt them? Am I secure here? Social psychologist Matthew Lieberman explains in Social, why our brains are wired to connect that our need to connect is as fundamental as our need for food and water. When connection feels uncertain, your mind works overtime. The replay becomes an attempt to restore clarity and emotional balance. It's your brain's way of protecting your place in the social world, even if the method feels clumsy and tiring. At first glance, this process is not a flaw, but a built-in system for learning and adjustment. And yet the very mechanism that helps you understand others can quietly begin to turn inward in a more critical way. There is a subtle line between healthy reflection and rumination, and most people cross it without noticing. Reflection asks gentle questions. What can I learn from this? Rumination repeats accusations. Why did I mess that up? In daily life, this shift can happen in seconds. You leave a dinner party thinking about one awkward comment, and by the time you reach home, your mind has built an entire story about being socially inept. Rumination feeds on emotional intensity. If you are already stressed or self-conscious, the replay becomes stickier. The brain's threat detection systems treat social mistakes as dangers to be solved. Instead of extracting one useful insight and moving on, the mind loops, hoping that more thinking will produce relief. Ironically, the opposite happens. The more you circle the moment, the more emotionally charged it becomes. Psychologist Susan Nolan Hoeksema, known for her research on rumination, writes in Women Who Think Too Much that rumination is a passive and repetitive focus on one's distress. That passivity is crucial. You are thinking a lot but not moving forward. Everyday examples are painfully familiar. Rereading a text message you sent hours ago, replaying a short exchange with a coworker, or mentally rewriting a conversation that can no longer be changed. As this pattern settles in, the replay stops being about understanding the interaction and starts revealing something deeper about your emotional needs and inner world. When a conversation keeps returning, it is rarely just about accuracy. Your mind is not a courtroom trying to establish facts. It is more like a messenger carrying feelings that did not get a voice in the moment. Beneath the repeated scene, there is often a quieter question. What did this mean for me emotionally? Maybe you laughed along with a teasing remark, but later felt a sting of embarrassment. Maybe you agreed too quickly when you wanted to say no. The replay is your inner world, asking to be heard. In everyday life, this shows up in small but telling ways. You might keep revisiting a short exchange with a friend who interrupted you, not because the interruption was dramatic, but because it touched a deeper need to feel respected. Or you replay a compliment you brushed off, sensing a gap between how others see you and how you see yourself. These loops highlight emotional needs for validation, safety, and authenticity. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman emphasizes in Emotional Intelligence that if your emotional abilities aren't in hand, you are at the mercy of your feelings. Replaying conversations can be an early signal that a feeling slipped past unnoticed. Instead of dismissing the loop as pointless overthinking, it can become an invitation to name what you actually felt: hurt, relief, pride, fear. That naming begins to loosen the grip of the replay. As you start listening to these hidden messages, the focus naturally shifts from the event itself to the story you are building about who you are within it. Every replayed conversation quietly edits your sense of self. Memory is not a neutral recording. It is shaped by the beliefs you already carry. If you see yourself as awkward, your mind highlights every stumble. If you fear rejection, it zooms in on every ambiguous pause. Over time, these selective replays can harden into personal narratives. I'm bad at expressing myself. People don't really listen to me. I always say the wrong thing. In ordinary situations, this process is almost invisible. A brief silence after you speak in a group meeting becomes, in your memory, proof that your ideas are uninteresting. A delayed reply to a message feels like confirmation that you are a burden. Each replay strengthens the thread connecting past experiences to your present identity. You are not just remembering a conversation, you are rehearsing a version of who you think you are. Psychologist Ulrich Neisser, a pioneer in memory research, described autobiographical memory as part of the extended self in his work 5 Kinds of Self-Knowledge. Your memories are woven into your identity. When you repeatedly revisit certain moments, you are reinforcing specific self-images, sometimes without realizing it. Recognizing this link opens a new possibility. If replaying conversations shapes your story, then changing how you engage with those replays might slowly reshape the story itself, which leads to the question of how to transform this habit into something more intentional. Once you see that these mental reruns are shaping your story, a quiet shift becomes possible. Instead of being dragged through the replay, you can begin to sit beside it. This is where conscious self-dialogue enters. Imagine watching a familiar scene in your mind and gently asking, what am I trying to understand here? What part of me is speaking? In everyday life, this might happen after a tense chat with a coworker. Rather than repeating their words on a loop, you pause and notice your own reaction, the tightness in your chest, the urge to defend yourself, the wish to be appreciated. This kind of inner conversation is not about excusing mistakes or endlessly analyzing every detail. It is about replacing automatic judgment with curiosity. Psychologist Carl Rogers wrote in On Becoming a Person, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." When you meet your replaying mind with acceptance, the tone of the loop softens. You start asking constructive questions. What did I actually want in that moment? How could I express that more clearly next time? In small daily situations, misunderstanding a joke, stumbling through an explanation, you can practice responding to yourself the way a kind friend would. This turns the replay into a rehearsal space for growth, rather than a courtroom of self-criticism. And as this kinder dialogue develops, it naturally draws your attention toward a skill that helps interrupt the loop at its source, the ability to return to the present moment. Even with insight and compassion, the mind has a habit of drifting back to old scenes. This is where presence becomes essential. Presence does not erase the replay, it creates a gentle boundary around it. In a simple moment, washing dishes, walking to the bus, waiting in line, you notice the sensation of water on your hands or the rhythm of your steps. The conversation in your head is still there, but it is no longer the entire stage. In everyday terms, this can look surprisingly ordinary. You catch yourself replaying a meeting while brushing your teeth. Instead of fighting the thought, you shift attention to the taste of toothpaste, the sound of the brush. For a few seconds, your nervous system recalibrates. The loop loosens its grip. Psychologist Jon Kabat-Zinn, a pioneer of mindfulness-based stress reduction, writes in Wherever You Go, There You Are. Mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. That non-judgment is crucial. You are not scolding your mind for wandering, you are guiding it home. With practice, these brief returns to the present accumulate. They teach your brain that it does not have to solve every social puzzle immediately. Some moments can remain unfinished without threatening your sense of safety. And as the pressure to perfect every interaction eases, a new question emerges about how this calmer awareness might change the way you connect with others. As presence becomes more familiar, something unexpected happens. The replay no longer feels like an enemy to defeat, but like raw material you can use. When you revisit a conversation from a calmer place, you begin to notice patterns in how you relate to people. Maybe you often agree too quickly to avoid tension. Maybe you hold back opinions to keep the peace. These realizations are not accusations. They are maps pointing toward more honest connection. In everyday situations, this insight can quietly reshape your behavior. After replaying a rushed conversation with a sibling, you might realize you never said what you actually felt. The next time you talk, you slow down and choose clearer words. Or after noticing how often you interrupt friends in your mental reruns, you experiment with listening a little longer. The replay becomes a rehearsal for empathy, both toward others and toward yourself. Psychologist Marshall Rosenberg, in Nonviolent Communication, emphasizes that empathy is a respectful understanding of what others are experiencing. When you examine your replays with empathy, you start extending that same respectful curiosity outward. You become more attentive to tone, pauses, and unspoken feelings in real time. The habit that once trapped you in your head begins guiding you back into richer, more intentional conversations. Seen this way, replaying is not just about correcting mistakes. It is about refining how you show up in relationships, moment by moment. And when you recognize that this looping mind has been trying all along to help you belong and connect, the tension that started this journey softens into something more compassionate and clear. At the beginning, the replay felt like a burden, a sign that something might be wrong with you, but following it closely reveals a different story. Your mind revisits conversations because connection matters deeply, and because you are constantly learning how to be with others and with yourself. The loops carry messages about unmet needs, hidden feelings, and evolving identity. When you meet these replays with curiosity, compassion, and presence, they stop being endless traps and become invitations. They teach you to listen inwardly, to question harsh self-stories, and to approach relationships with greater care. The same habit that once kept you awake at night can guide you toward clearer expression and deeper empathy. You do not have to silence the mind that revisits. You can walk alongside it, understanding that its persistence comes from a human desire to belong and to grow. And in that understanding, the replay loses its sting and becomes part of a gentler, ongoing conversation with yourself, one that supports connection instead of fear.